Good evening, Gills fans and everybody else, and welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It is Wednesday night, which means that match preview showtime has once again rolled around as we look forward to a weekend trip up north to take on Tranmere Rovers. And I'm pleased to say, making his second appearance on the channel to let us know everything we need to know about Rovers is Ben Jones. I will put his Twitter handle, in the description at the bottom of the video. So please go and give him a follow. If you watch Gabe Sutton's EFL debate show on a Thursday night, which has yours truly on it, you will also see Ben's face as well. It is a regular panelist like myself. So first of all, Ben, appreciate you coming on once again. I appreciate
Yep,
you've got to
cheers.
go out this evening. Want to find out everything that we can about what has been a very poor season, unfortunately, for
Yeah.
Tranmere Rovers so far. We'll get into the whys and wherefores shortly, but we'll have a quick look at the last six for both sides.
hmm
Before we do that, in terms of the Gills, we'll do that quickly because everybody knows about that. We played Walsall, Notts County, Swindon, Newport, Wrexham and Salford City in the last half a dozen. We picked up 2 wins and lost 4 in that time. Obviously, a lot of that period was interim period with Keith Millen taking charge in between Neil Harris's sacking and Stephen Clements being appointed as head coach. So 6 points from the last 18 for Gills. That leaves them in 8th position at the moment with 28 points from 18 games in total. Grim reading for Tranmere, unfortunately. Last 6 games have included fixtures against Crewe Alexandra, Doncaster Rovers, Morecambe, Stockport County, Forest Green Rovers and Swindon. And it is a paltry return of 4 points from 18. But they have come in the last 2 fixtures against Forest Green and Sutton. And Tranmere currently sit 22nd with just 14 points from the same amount of games. Ben, my first question to you. Tell me about Tranmere's issues. Is it one thing? Is it a number of things? I've written down
Yeah.
owners,
No, I think
managers, question mark, players, question mark, injuries, poor recruitment, or a combination of all of the above.
yeah, there's a bunch of things going on, I think, that probably hasn't even started just this season.
Okay.
Um, I think it's a culmination of some inconsistent recruitment that's gone on for 3 or 4 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the past few seasons, we've had kind of standout players that have strengthened the squad enough that we end up with a decent team. Um, Thinking we had James Vaughan, Kane Wooler in, so and that was actually a really strong squad, that one. But then after that, sort of last season, we had Ethan Bristow and Josh Dacres-Cogley, who were probably the best 2 fullbacks in the league. But the rest of the squad was, a bit average, really. And that was kind of reflected in we looked like we were potentially going to have a playoff push for about 30 games, and then um, essentially just completely fell away. And once we had the 50 points on the board, the players gave up and we pretty much coasted to the end of the season. And then in the summer, we lost those 2 fullbacks. Um, we did recruit some good players potentially. I think Luke McGee, the goalkeeper, was a very good improvement on what we had last year. Um, I think possibly even against yourselves away last year, our goalkeeper was at fault for at least 1 goal. Um,
I'm trying to think back to that game. We was fairly
it was 2-0,
comfortable.
wasn't it?
2-0. It was
Yeah,
very comfortable. I think we scored
yeah.
early. I think no one decided to pick up from the corner the first
Yeah, it
half.
was a
And
free
then
header, yeah.
I think if I remember
Um,
rightly, our centre half scored the second. You just let him stroll from his own half
yeah, it
and
was
then
like a
just
tap
wander into
in
the
from the
6
near
yard box.
post or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
But I think from memory, I could be misremembered, but from memory, I think the feeling was the keeper should have been a bit closer on both. But as I say, this season we have a much more commanding goalkeeper. He's a decent shot stopper. He commands his area well,
Mm-hmm.
and he talks to the players as well, the defence a lot. So that's a big plus.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the other end of the pitch, we signed Luke Norris and Christian Dennis, which on the face of it was 2 decent signings. Luke's an experienced kind of target man at this level. It doesn't get a
Former
massive
Gills as
goal.
well.
Yeah, for Gills as well.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't get massive goal return, but normally turns around 10 a season or so. I think he got maybe 11 or 12 for Stevenage last year. And then Christian Dennis, again, he scored 20 odd last year. So on the face of that, that was a good signing. But where the problems kind of come is we've recruited some of these players without an overarching plan in mind. So
Okay.
Christian Dennis has to play next to a Luke Norris or someone in order to be effective.
Mm-hmm.
Or someone like Amari Patrick, who they had at Carlisle last year, who's going to do
Yes.
loads of running and stretch the defence and cause space to be left for Christian. Whereas for large parts of this season, he's ended up playing in a one, either in a 4-3-3 as like the spearhead of that, or in a 4-2-3-1 at the tip of that. And in both of those setups, he's kind of been very isolated. He doesn't have either the pace or the strength to trouble defenses.
Okay.
Where he's going to profit is he's a poacher, isn't he? So um, he wants to be there to pick up the loose balls, and so he wants to kind of be the second striker. So in the games where Luke Norris has played, we look a completely different side. But
Okay.
unfortunately for us, he's only started, I think it's 4 league games due to various injuries. I think we've won 2 and drawn one of those, and then we also got a draw at Barnsley in the League Cup, which we progressed on penalties when
Okay.
Luke Norris played. So again, we look a completely different side there, but that kind of comes back to the recruitment problem that we shouldn't be tactically so reliant on one player being fit. Otherwise, we struggle, which is where we're at. So Luke Norris is out injured again now. We travelled down to Sutton without him and played Connor Jennings up front, who's a bit of a club legend after being part of that squad that got back-to-back promotions.
Yep.
I mean, he had an issue with cancer after that, and kind of went around playing a bit for Stockport and Hartlepool. Nearly helped keep Hartlepool up in the division last year, but they just kind of slipped into non-league. So I think it would be fair to say when he signed, most people were very underwhelmed by that. He's 32, he's had health issues, blah, 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 blah. But as it's turned out, he's actually been, well, he probably should be captain for one
Okay.
because he's putting 110% in every game. He's played pretty much everywhere right through the spine of the side, apart from centre back. So he's played holding midfielder, centre mid, attacking mid, striker, left wing, and wherever he's played, he's put at least a 7 out of 10 in for us.
Okay.
And he's our joint leading goal scorer, so he's been one of the positives. But yeah, so overall the recruitment's just been a bit of a mess. We didn't adequately replace those 2 fullbacks we lost in Cogley and Bristow. We've actually signed 4 left backs, and none of them are well, none of them are anywhere near Bristow, but none of them are even, I would say, average League Two fullbacks.
I was going to say
Um,
the point probably with Dacres Cogley and Bristow is that whoever you bought in was likely to be a
yeah,
downgrade, and that's no disrespect to who you bought in. It's just
yeah,
how good them two were. But if the standard
yeah.
is miles off what you were getting from them two, like you say,
Hmm.
if it's not even like 50%, then obviously it makes a big impact. It's interesting because I've written in my notes, I put Dennis, Jennings, McGee, Norris, Saunders all look like solid enough signings for the level. I'm not saying they all jump out the page and you think, oh, they're going to win us the
Yeah,
league. But like you said about Luke Norris, you get your 10, 12 every season and he'll be involved in probably
yeah, for
the
sure.
same again, indirectly or directly with assists. Christian Dennis, unfortunately, as you say, is a good player in a right system,
Yeah.
but then becomes a bit one-dimensional. So if you've just recruited a load of names rather than recruited with the plan of how you want to set
Hmm.
up, then you can understand why it's falling down. Um, and I actually wrote down, have the departures hindered progress more than any signings have perhaps helped it in terms of who you lost? Was it
Um,
they've had a bigger impact on you in a negative
yeah,
sense than any signing has had a positive impact?
yeah. I mean, in terms of those 2 fullbacks that have gone, so the
Mm-hmm.
left back is the bigger issue because we have a mix of Jake Leake, who is on loan from Hull, and he's
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be a similar profile to Bristow.
Okay.
He's athletic, obviously left-footed, whereas we've been playing a few right-footers at left back. But defensively, he's a bit suspect. And then we have Connor Wood, who has been at Bradford and Leyton Orient and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with him, he doesn't. For me, if he gets forward, he then gets caught out far too often defensively. Doesn't quite have the stamina to go up and down the pitch like we would have had out of Bristow.
Okay.
And if he sits back, it just kind of messes with our system a bit much. So that the left back's the bigger issue. On the right back side, we've played Leo Connor there, who did play there a couple seasons ago for us before we signed Cogley.
Okay.
Um, and he's defensively, very sound. He started the season with a poor game on the opening day against Barrow, but since then, defensively fine. Where he maybe hasn't done as much as Cogley would do is going forward. So that's kind of changed the dynamic of who we've been playing on the right wing.
Mhm.
So last season, Kieran Morris would play there as an inverted winger. So he's left footer. And generally what would happen is he would kind of cut inside, Cogley would overlap, Morris would pass it to him, Cogley cross, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
So then you would think, okay, if you've got that set up and then you sign Luke Norris and Christian Dennis, those two are
Lovely
really
stuff.
going to benefit from that.
Yep.
But then, as I say, our right back Leo Connor doesn't really get forward enough. So we don't have that there. And it's taken us a little while to work out how to change that. And to be fair to Nigel Adkins, he has been getting absolutely hammered by some of our fans, largely because of where we are in the league, as much as anything. That's always going to set you on
Of
the
course.
back foot. But I think we've, in the last few games, started to become a bit harder to score against, which is important when you've shipped 30 goals so far this season. So against Forest Green, we kept clean sheet. Against Sutton, they got a last minute equaliser.
Mhm.
But up until then, they hadn't really troubled us. And the goal
I
was,
saw Adkins' interview actually on the
yeah,
highlight show, and it was almost just a wry smile of resignation that you can't really
yeah,
do a lot more. Like the centre half smashes that into the crowd 9 times out of 10, but it's the one day it
yeah,
falls to him and he whacks it in the bottom corner.
yeah. I mean, with that game, it wasn't. I mean, you're never going to get a great game at Sutton. Let's be honest. I mean,
No.
they're so direct that
Mhm.
it kind of influences the way you have to play yourself. And the pitch was muddy. I'm not going to make excuses. It's the same for both sides, but without doing anything special, we were comfortable for 80, 85 minutes in that game. And then a knockdown, and a centre back just happens to be free for whatever reason. And yeah, I'd say it was unfortunate, that result. But for me, I've seen signs of improvement, in so much as going back to where we've struggled without Cogley, how we've now adapted is with these two defensive fullbacks, we give more attacking license to the wingers.
Okay.
So the wingers aren't required to track back as much. Um, and we have Rob Apter on the right wing now, who's on loan from Blackpool. And he didn't really play much at the start of the season, but since we played Stockport a few weeks back, he's had a run of 6 or 7 games in the side. And
Okay.
since then, there hasn't been a left back that's managed to cope with him. He's very small. He's probably like 5'4" or something. But he so low center of gravity, and he shifts the ball one side to the other very quickly. So when he gets in those 1v1 situations, he causes a lot of issues. I think in those 6 games since Stockport, he's got something like 2 or 3 goals and 2 assists.
Okay.
Could have had more. On Saturday, he was directly involved for the goal. He beat the left back and put a cross in, which their defender deflected into his own goal. But it was going straight to Christian Dennis. So, he's really good in those situations. And that's kind of how we've started to adapt. We've given those players more license to do, to be more attacking and stay higher up the pitch so that when we win the ball, those two wide players can, get at the fullbacks in 1v1 situations. So who's really important there for us is we have Regan Hendry, central midfield, who joined us from Forest Green last January.
Mhm.
He won promotion with them when they won the league a couple of years ago. Um, and he's very good at kind of carrying the ball and his passing and those kind of things. So where we're quite dangerous is the opposition have been attacking, and on the transition, Regan will pass the ball out wide, fairly quickly, and the wingers will get at the fullbacks, and that's where we look to create our chances really. The big kind of letdown for me defensively for us, sorry, attacking wise for this season. In a struggling side, you would hope you were going to be strong on set pieces.
Mhm.
Defensively, we've conceded the most in the league alongside Forest Green, which is 10. And then I don't think we've scored any attacking. So that's probably our real weak point. Um, and I would hope that, as we get closer and closer to January, that's one of the first things we look at addressing is how do we concede less goals from set pieces at one end and
Of course.
score more at the other? Because none of the games we've played in, anyone's blown us away really. Stockport beat us 2-0, but we were down to 10 men for the whole second half.
Mhm.
Wrexham beat us 1-0. Notts County beat us 2-1. I think Wimbledon was the only time anyone's put any real goals past us. We lost 4-1 there, but again, we were down to 10 men for the whole second half. And up until that point, we were probably slightly the better side there. So generally, we're right on in the game in most games, and we just seem to be falling the wrong side of fine margins. Um,
Your first half, your season so far sounds like us. First half
yeah,
of last season, I don't think there was many teams that actually blew us away. I mean, for all the flaws that Neil Harris had in terms of attacking output, I think it
yeah,
was fair to say that most of the fan base, or said that defensively we're all right. But if you
mhm,
don't score any goals, then obviously there's so much pressure on your back four and your defensive players if you do concede. So it sounds like there's similarities there, and you're just coming out the wrong side of the line all the time. So it'd be interesting to see the matchup. Interesting you mentioned about um, a right footer on the left hand side at fullback, because that'd mean he's probably going to come up against Connor Mahoney. So that'd be quite interesting. So it seems that both of us are probably thinking that our right wingers could be rather key in terms of an attacking sense. And I'd fancy Mahoney up against most left backs, let alone any left back that's playing on the wrong side of the pitch. So
mm,
that'd be an interesting battle. We know Nigel Atkins replaced Ian Dawes, I think it was,
yeah,
in middle of September after a horrendous run. I think it was 6 defeats on the spin that finally put the
yeah.
final nail
I think we
into
had one
Dawes'
win in the
coffin.
first seven. Yeah,
And I know you spoke on EFL debate and in the WhatsApp group that we're in, and have said that he was very underwhelmed with Dawes when he came in. So what's the feeling around Nigel Atkins now? Obviously, has he got it till the end of the season, or is he still in interim charge officially?
no.
Or
So he's been given a 2.5 year contract, which
oh, okay, I must have
I
missed that.
actually
Fair
think
enough.
is too long. I mean, I actually think he's good for the situation we're in.
Hmm.
We don't want to, whilst currently we're right on the edge of that relegation zone, we don't want to be there come March or April.
Hmm.
So, and Atkins is a motivator. He's always really positive, and if you
Hmm.
watch any of his interviews, sometimes maybe even too positive. But I think he's the perfect guy to make sure we aren't in a dogfight come the last 5, 6 games of the season.
Okay.
Um, the football doesn't have any massive identity to it. We just adapt to the game. We're competitive. We work hard. Um, and that's basically what you're going to get from us. But at the minute, that's what we need to try and claw results. At home, we're always good. I think even when we've got a weaker team like we do this year, we still pick up results at home.
Mhm.
All four of our wins being at home this season. Um, so yeah, I'm happy with Adkins. I would have liked it only to be till the end of the season,
Okay.
so that we could then kick on and go in a different direction next year. But the only thing I wonder is, um, when he was first here, he was here as technical director, effectively director of football,
Hmm.
just a different name, I guess. So the only thing I wonder is if he will go back upstairs at the end of the season. If someone else comes in, or we want to, try and push forward and so on. Because at the minute there's a lot of talk of potential takeover around the club. Some pretty big companies have been kind of touted as potential suitors. I mean, it's not really been any secret that the club has been approached by a variety of suitors over the last 2 years. But it's quite clear that Mark Palios, the current owner, doesn't want to sell to just anyone. He wants someone who can, safeguard the future of the club. They're not going to asset strip it. They're going to either redevelop our current stadium because the main stand needs a bit of work, or move us to a new stadium.
Okay.
So it needs to be someone who has that kind of financial muscle. Not necessarily to invest directly in the team, just to continue to, improve the infrastructure and all those kind of things. So yeah, I think from that point of view, the 2.5 year contract surprised me. The only thing, it might have taken a 2.5 year contract to actually get him to take the job though, because he lives down in Hampshire.
So there's got to be some sort of carrot dangle to persuade
Yeah,
him to do it for any time.
yeah, because
Yeah,
yeah, because if you're him, are you really gonna up sticks and come up here for a 6 month contract? Um, so
probably not. No.
yeah, so I guess at least with a 2.5 year contract, even if he does get moved on in 6 months' time, then he gets the compensation package and he's happy. So that's probably what's gone on there, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it would make sense. Like you say, geographically, it's a huge move for him, isn't it? And there has to be some sort of incentive when you're picking up the pieces of a team
Yeah.
that's really really struggling down the bottom, and that's the reason he's got the job, unfortunately. In terms of the here and now of Saturday, and
Yeah.
you've mentioned a lot of players already. Um, I was having a look through your most recent games, and it looks like you play a back four this season
Hmm.
again. Then it's a variation, like you say, in front. There's been 4-4-2, there's been a 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, different types of adjustments and tweaks further up the pitch. How are you expecting Rovers to line up on Saturday, given the fact that you have actually picked up 4 points in the last two games?
Yeah, well, in those two games, we've played a 4-4-2.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was with Luke Norris. Then he got injured, and Connor Jennings played up front the
Yep.
last game. We do still have a couple players besides Norris that are injured. So Josh Hawkes, who would normally play left wing, he's been out injured. It's unclear where he's kind of at this weekend. Maybe he'll come on the bench or something like that. Um, so I would imagine we'll probably start the game 4-4-2, but have the capacity to swap to a 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1.
Mm-hmm.
If the game kind of demands it. I mean, the main thing I would expect from the game is we will be, very kind of aggressive in pressing and, very workmanlike and all those kind of attributes. Um, the pitch is probably the best pitch in the league, so it lends itself really well to, counter-attacking,
Mm-hmm.
quick passing on the floor and so on. Um, so yeah, I think that's what you're going to get from us. You'll probably, I don't know how Gills normally play, but you'll probably see us sit off and let you have possession and then pick and choose when to press and try and counter attack from that.
And in terms of personnel, you think it'd be pretty much what was starting at
Yeah.
Sutton?
Um, yeah, because as far as I'm aware, there's no one really back from injury other than
Okay.
maybe coming onto the bench.
Okay.
Um, I mean, I think central midfield's our real kind of sticking point because Regan Hendry's a really good playmaker,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't have maybe the legs that you need for a central midfielder. So you need someone next to him, but then kind of Brad Walker's just the most immobile centre mid in the league. So that's a little bit of an issue area for us. So if anyone is kind of 90% fit that's got a bit more of an engine on them, we might see a change there. But other than that, I would expect to see it pretty much the same.
It's interesting again because I think central midfield, if we line up the same as we did for the last couple, then we'll have plenty of legs in there.
Yeah,
Certainly the trio that played in there against Salford City last week. So yeah, I mean, I think the only question mark we'll have will be over Scott Malone, whether he comes straight back in. I know he's been back on the training pitch this week, having missed Salford. If it was me, he comes in. I thought Max Clark was one that struggled a little bit, but got better as the game went on Saturday. Um, to be fair, his delivery from set pieces and in attacking areas was very good. I think he was sort of indirectly involved in one of the goals and nearly had an assist second half. Tim Dien crashed a header against the bar. Um, but I think everyone has players that you just think if they're fit, they have to come into the starting 11. And I
yeah, for
think
sure.
Scott Malone's probably one of them for Gills. So if it was me, I'd go with the same team that started against Salford, except for Scott Malone coming in for Max Clark. So that'd be like a 4-1-4-1. So we just let Ethan Coleman sit and protect the back four. And then we played like sort of almost two eights with Dom
Yep,
Jeffries and George Lapsley, who went and pressed and hunted the ball back and tried to
yep,
get us playing on the front foot. So it'd be, yeah, there's some certainly intriguing battles in store if we've got everything correct. It could be Conor Mahoney up against a right-footed player at left back. You're saying that Robert Apter could cause issues to our left full back, whether that's Scott Malone or Max Clark. And then I think the midfield battle could be absolutely key. And I'd fancy us to come out on top if you do go with Hendry and Walker, and they are as pedestrian as you've tried to lead us to believe. Final question, Ben, before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. And you know what it's going to be. It's the dreaded score prediction.
Um, It's a very tricky one, this, because I think it's going to be a really cagey game.
Hmm.
I say I think we'll set off and let you have possession. Whether we can keep a clean sheet, I'm not sure. So I'd probably go 1-1.
So I was torn between head and heart, and my head was saying 1-0. I don't think that's a bad result for either of us.
No.
Gills have been sort of up and down on the road. I think we won our first four without conceding, and then lost four on the bounce, or 4 out of 5, I think it is. I think we won at Swindon in recent weeks. My heart was saying 2-1, but I certainly wouldn't be disappointed with a 1-1 draw. For
Yeah.
you, it'd be a decent point against a side that's up near the top of the table, and for us, I think any point on the road's never a disaster if you're winning the majority of
Yeah,
your
I
home
think the
fixtures.
only slight issue we have is we have Mansfield away the following week. And we don't really want to lose any ground on the teams around us. So there is a little bit of pressure on us to get a win in this game,
Okay.
because then we kind of go into that Mansfield game with it somewhat being a free hit. Um,
But yeah,
we
if you
never
get
do.
beat Saturday, then suddenly Mansfield becomes huge.
Yeah, because you can't really afford to lose two on the bounce. So
They're a good
um,
side. Well, for
yeah,
45 minutes against us, they were absolute. Second half, they were quality against us. I think
yeah,
we were the better side half out. That was the game where the referee allowed the free kick to be taken
sure.
whilst in the process of booking the player, and they equalised from it. I think if we'd got in at half time, 1-0 up, I think we could have beaten them. But fair play to them second half, they were absolutely superb. I've said them
Yeah,
and Notts County are the two best sides I've seen this season.
yeah. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think KG game 1-0. So
Yeah, like I say, I won't be disappointed with that. If I'm going to be overly optimistic, I might have said that Gills would nick it by the odd goal, but a point wouldn't be a disaster. Ben, as always, mate, it's a real pleasure. Really enjoy picking your brains about Tranmere and the game in general. So thank you for coming on.
yep,
Like I've said, Gills fans, Tranmere fans, go and follow Ben. His description and Twitter handle will be in the details at the bottom of this video. Myself and Ava are coming up to Tranmere on Saturday, very early start. So there will be a match day live at the weekend, which we're looking forward to doing. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Please keep liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all that you do as we push on towards 3,000 subscribers and up the Gills.